Ubisoft is genuinely afraid that Assassin's Creed Shadows is not going to sell, and they are doing everything they can to get people to swipe their credit card and pre-order this game, but it's not really working out for them, and now they've decided to put out this big, long PR statement that is supposed to equate to an apology, even though they don't say the words "we're sorry." And of course, the media is running to their defense, just saying we are racists for criticizing this title and their choices. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, Ubisoft has really been quiet about Assassin's Creed Shadows because they knew that the pile of problems that people have called out was not going to go away, but they decided to put out this generic PR statement in hopes it would quell some of the worries and the discontent amongst customers, and it definitely has not done that. Honestly, it's done the opposite because people are so upset with them for putting out this statement and not apologizing over any of the decisions that they've made. I'm not going to read it because it is very long, but they talk about how they did take creative liberties. While we strive for authenticity in everything that we do, Assassin's Creed games are works of fiction inspired by real historical events and figures. Assassin's Creed, yes, has had some fantastical elements in the past, but when it comes to the historical figures they've had, people have praised them, like with Cleopatra, Leonardo da Vinci, George Washington. I mean, the list goes on and on. They've always done, from what we saw, their best to accurately portray these figures, and now with Yasuke, they're doing the complete opposite. They say how they collaborated with external consultants, historians, researchers, and internal teams at Ubisoft Japan to inform their creative choices, but we know the people that they worked with, they only worked with because they supported the narratives that the team at Ubisoft wanted to push. They wanted to portray Yasuke as, Japan's first black samurai instead of what he really was, which was closer to a retainer. So they found people who were going to support that, like Thomas Lockley, who now has fled social media because he was caught red-handed editing Wikipedia pages, linking back to himself as a source. Basically, they took Thomas Lockley and probably many other people's fan fiction and ran with it thinking that was a good idea, and it has not been. People have been absolutely roasting them for it, and if from the get-go, from the beginning, they had just taken this Yasuke that they've put in the game, but didn't name him Yasuke, but also said in the promotional material, oh, this new character is basically loosed on Yasuke, no one would really care because it was a new original character, and then they could do whatever the heck they wanted with him, but that is not what they did here. They took his name and they ran with it, and now of course they're trying to backtrack and say, oh well, we did take creative liberties and it is a work of fiction inspired by real historical events and figures, but that's not the way that they were talking about it in the first place. Why would you bring up historians and researchers and consultants if you weren't trying to create something that was historically accurate? Do you know what I'm saying? It just seems very suspicious, and they're basically trying to cover their asses at this point because Ubisoft is genuinely afraid their game won't sell. If they were actually apologetic over anything they've been called out on, they'd make a better statement than this. They've got Japanese gamers accusing them of disrespecting their culture and history, plus Western audiences also defending those Japanese gamers, saying, yeah, I don't know what they did here and Ubisoft should be ashamed of themselves. So you'd think they'd at least say the words, we're sorry, but there's no sorry in sight. They decided to make franchise history with a playable historical figure, yet they clearly took information from sources that would only support the vision they had without any care for how their audiences would view it. They know this game is forever marred in controversy, and now they're panicking, but of course, the journos came to their defense, talking about how we're just synphobes for criticizing Ubisoft. This is a TheGamer article by James Troughton. It says Assassin's Creed Shadows has drawn backlash from from a vocal minority for having a black protagonist. The issue isn't that they have a black protagonist. The issue is that they're saying, oh, it's this historical figure while referencing fan fiction. Because Thomas Lockley's work is that. It is just fan fiction. The problem is how they marketed this black protagonist and the fact that they showed so much disrespect, like in the combat trailers we've seen, they put hip hop battle music behind him. It just doesn't make any sense and it comes across as very disrespectful. It also says the Japanese trailer was dislike bombed and petitions have been made to cancel and boycott the game as fans label Shadows woke and disrespectful. Yes, and people are allowed to do that. There are hundreds of thousands of Japanese gamers alone who are upset over this game, saying that it disrespects their culture and history. Never mind Western audiences who are calling Ubisoft out on their BS. And of course, we actually got an article from Kotaku by none other than Alyssa Mercante. And instead of at least acknowledging the fact that Japanese gamers are upset, it is a completely ridiculous article. It is a biased attempt to actively misrepresent the subject. It says this was never about anything other than hate. Movements for ethics in games journalism or against forced DEI in video games are veils draped over bigotry. She talks about how there are people online who are saying, the N-word under this promotional material, and they're just being racists. Now, does she show any screenshots or any proof of this? No, she uses quotes that are not readily available. I'm sure that there are some people who are saying things like this because there are always bad apples in every bunch, but the majority of people are just fairly criticizing this game and Ubisoft's decisions. Now, of course, she talks about Gamergate and about how, it was a harassment campaign when, of course, it wasn't. Gamergate 1 was about ethics in journalism. She says that's fake. She's allowed to have her opinion, even though her opinion's wrong. But she's actually talking about newer video games like Assassin's Creed Shadows, Star Wars Outlaws Concord, and are saying, we're only criticizing these games because we're racists, which is definitely not the case. We're criticizing these games because we are sick and tired of the way that developers and, of course, journalists covering these games have absolutely no respect for us as audiences. When they say something is supposed to be historically accurate, we expect them to uphold that. And then when they can't, they change their tune and say, it's only loosely based on history, which is bullshit. What she can say, especially having faced this ire ceaselessly for months, is that this kind of movement is fueled by nothing but hate, which is so completely untrue. It isn't fueled by hate, it's fueled by passion, because we are passionate about video games. I'm not sitting here talking about video games being bad because I hate video games. I've streamed over 165 games on this channel and reviewed them. I am talking about them because I actively want the industry to get better. I don't want people being fired simply for having a political opinion that doesn't fall in line with the other activists that work at companies. I don't want there to be developers who feel like they can't create what they want because they're going to be bullied for it. I mean, even looking at something like Concord, for example, I have heavily criticized it, but I still played it. I still gave it a chance, even if I thought it was going to be trash, and it is, but I never said once that the developers couldn't create it. I'm simply criticizing the product that they're making, and I want everybody to be able to do that, to create whatever they want, even if it looks like trash. Now, she says it's a special brand of hatred, as a sort of backwards logic boomerang careening through the air on its way back from progress. Since its inception, gaming as a cultural space was largely dominated by white boys and men. You had to have a certain amount of wealth and free time to even partake in it. So, of course, she's saying that white men have privilege, that white men have dominated this space. Oh, and you also had to have so much money to even partake in it, which most certainly is not the case. Gaming has always been inclusive. There have always been females within the video game industry, and I am so sick and tired of hearing this narrative being pushed around when it's just not true. What about Roberta Williams, who co-founded Sierra, pioneered the graphic adventure game genre, and created the King's Quest series with her husband? Carol Shaw was one of the first female video game designers and programmers. She created River Raid for Activision in 1982 for the Atari 2600. What about Marie Shimazaki, who was the lead character designer and art director on Baya freaking Netta? I mean, these people just love to sit here and lie all day because that's what they want. They want the industry to be the way they think it should be, which it's not working out well for them. And they're being absolutely roasted for it every time they post. And Alyssa actually decided to make a tweet about her article simply because Grums, aka Mark Kern, made a post about her article, and she said, "This is all happening because Mark Kern tagged me from behind a block and said that I'm attacking all Japanese people when I don't even mention them at all." But that is the major issue with her article. She didn't talk about Japanese people being upset. She just said everybody criticizing Ubisoft are racists. Both of these articles failed to talk about the Japanese backlash to this title, and she failed to mention that a lot of the outrage is actually coming from Japan because she just says that it's all coming from racists, and she admits it here. She doesn't even mention them at all. That is a major problem with the coverage on Kotaku that she put out. So it will be interesting to see how people continue to respond to this official post made on the Assassin's Creed X account, because so far people are furious at what they're saying. And it will be interesting to see how the Japanese individuals react to this statement, and of course the way that the media is tooth and nail defending Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed Shadows by calling us all racists. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.